G'day, my name's Mark Vassarotti.
My name's Jon Osborne.
We're here today just to have a chat. We work here at Arup, but we've got a whole bunch of ideas that we want to share with the world. John, what's an idea left of centre that you've been thinking about lately?
Well, yesterday I went to see a building project in Brunswick called the Commons, and it was set up by a bunch of architects who I think wanted a nice and affordable place to live. And they realised that if they didn't go through developers, if they didn't have branding and marketing, and if they didn't build apartments with car parking spaces, they could get a much better design for much less money. And I was just thinking about one of the terms he used, which was architectural activism. He calls himself an architectural activist, where instead of worrying about what planning tells you what you can do, he's just built an apartment which doesn't have any car parking, which is already starting to change the city.
It's really interesting because I used to own a place, in fact still do own a place down in Richmond that was set up on the same principle.
Yeah.
One of the fundamental principles was affordable housing, or cheap and affordable and with fair build quality, design quality. That place is now worth more money than the average person can afford though, because it's housing that's affordable as opposed to affordable housing. And so it's a really interesting that starts off one way, but as the taste of the cities change, it's going to become more expensive and move further away from the ideal.
I think these guys are facing similar challenges, and they particularly asked that people don't buy them as investments, but they buy them to live in. So they interview all the people that want to live there and decide whether they think they fit in with the ideal. It's actually a very idealistic.
Yeah, so that's not dissimilar to the co-op arrangement in the US or in Manhattan, because people live in such close proximity to each other, they kind of select who is allowed to buy into that building. The real problem that though is you can get a mono of, we're all hipsters and therefore we're all just going to go with trend after trend after trend, as opposed to people that actually allowing the price signal to actually encourage people into a market, and you might get into an exclusionary kind of environment.
I think the most interesting thing about this development though for me was that it wasn't a very high profile development. It was something that this architect really lived. He lived in the apartment, literally, that he designed. He lived with the people that he interviewed. And it was a real kind of mix of something that he was passionate about, but then something which also made very good sense from the point of view of the city.
So how do you keep that momentum going when he leaves, when he has kids, or when he no longer wants to live in that apartment because he wants to create a new space? How does he leave behind the institutional arrangements that actually are self-supporting of that vibe?
I don't know, but I'd imagine that because it is a community, because it's a group of people that know one another, because they have things like shared washing machines and shared community gardens as part of their building, that anybody who does leave has to replace themselves with somebody that wants to live in that place. So it's almost self-selecting.
Yeah, right. And then that leads to another interesting question, in that if it is self-selecting, that drives the mono that I was talking about before. So you never get that vibrancy and sooner or later people just go, this isn't what I want, and they kind of break down, or they're willing to entertain the exercise for so long, and then it breaks down because you stole my washing detergent. I'm really annoyed by that. Yeah. So I think the interesting part about that is there's a whole, and I think I've spoken to you about this before, that Bloomington, Indiana school, Ellen and Alstrom's kind of arguments around management of the commons, and rather than Harding's argument that it's a tragedy all the time, she says that actually no, if you do manage and you align your incentives with the commons, you can actually get that kind of environment that is self-sufficient, self-supporting. So that's really, really interesting.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.